Hello and welcome to Ultraviolet Network's Feature Explorer. My name is Matt Sharif, and today we're going to take a look at threat feeds. Before we get into this, let's answer the question of what is a threat feed. In short, a threat feed is a dynamic list. And here we go. Before we get started, before we take a look at threat feeds on a FortiGate, let's answer the question of what is a threat feed. A threat feed is generally an externally hosted text file that can be imported to the FortiGate via HTTP or HTTPS. A threat feed can be of one of four types, either an IP address threat feed, domain name, malware hash, or EMS threat feed if you have FortiClient EMS. Threat feeds are a little different than address objects because it allows you to either allow or block traffic destined or coming from a specific threat feed, as we'll see in the lab, without having to create address objects. And it's a really, really great thing if you have an automated SOC process. For instance, you have an automated way of identifying potentially malicious IP addresses. You could throw the IP address in a threat feed and that would get blocked within a very short amount of time. Let's take a look at how we're going to configure an IP address threat feed in this example. So you're going to go to your FortiGate and you're going to go down to Security Fabric External Connectors and you're going to go ahead and click on Create New. So we have a number of different external connectors, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to go ahead and stick with the threat feeds and specifically go with the IP address threat feeds. So this is basically going to allow me to have an external IP address threat feed, which is basically a list of IP addresses that I can then perform actions against. So in this case, I'm going to set up a threat feed that's going to go ahead and block a number of IP traffic to or from a number of IP addresses. So I'm going to call it UV threat feed. Name can be anything you want. In this case, if it's an external threat feed that you're paying for, they'll generally provide you with the URI that you need to associate with, and as well as the authentication criteria. Since this is an internal threat feed of my own, I can just do threat feed dot ultraviolet dot local / block me.txt, and I'll set the refresh rate to 1 minute. You can set the refresh rate anywhere between 1 minute and 43,200 minutes. And basically that's going to be the duration for how long it'll check for updates. So if you have a process that identifies a malicious IP address or a potentially bad IP address, you're going to need to make a business decision on how often you're going to query that threat feed for the information. So if I click that, it's going to start off as red. And it's just going to take a moment. And there we go. It's ingesting. Now it's green. Cool thing about this is now I can mouse over and click on View Entries. And I've got all of these IP addresses. The big trick behind this is if I go to this URL here, it's just a list of IP addresses. In fact, it's a text file that is literally formatted in the way that you see. There's nothing magical about what's being provided here. The good thing is that the FortiGate will recognize that the hashes are comments, so we can go ahead and ignore those. But we're not done here. Great, I've ingested the threat feed. Now what? You're not doing anything with it yet. So let's go ahead and get to the point where we're doing something with it. So in this case, I'm just going to block outbound traffic, and I'm going to create a policy, block threat feed traffic. Incoming is going to be my UV office in this case. Outgoing, in fact, it could be any, but I'm just going to stick with UV office outbound is ISP underlay. The source is going to be my UV office address, and then the destination is going to be the threat feed. In this case, it's IPv4 threat feed. So we're going to do that, and we're going to deny that traffic service is all. I don't really care if it's going to one of those. It's generally, we've identified it as bad, so we don't want the traffic to go there. And yes, we're going to go ahead and log violation traffic. Cool. Now, the only thing we've got to do is we've got to bring this to the top of our policy set. And there you have it. Now we have an outbound threat feed, an outbound policy blocking IP addresses in a threat feed. The cool thing is if I were to update this within a minute, that IP would be blocked by my network. Now, one of the main reasons you would use a threat feed is, for instance, just having a large clutter of firewall address objects that you don't necessarily want to allow access to can be just that, clutter. I find, personal opinion, there's no official ruling on this, that threat feeds can help you maintain the simplicity of the firewall with only allowing or keeping the addresses that you want to allow access to onto the FortiGate. For instance, if I'm allowing access out to fast.com or FortiCall or wherever else, we can go ahead and create those address objects. But for things that I don't necessarily want to allow access to, we can create threat feeds. A second reason is a number of customers I work with have to incur outage windows or change control windows that they can perform these changes in. However, being done by a threat feed does not require that because it does not technically require a change on the firewall itself. The beautiful thing about threat feeds is that if you put an incorrect IP address in the threat feed, we can go ahead and it will go ahead and get excluded. For instance, let me pull up a command window here, and I'm going to SSH to my threat feed server. Probably fat fingered that in. Sure did. There we go. CD website. So I have a Docker container running on this host, Docker. So if I do Docker container ls, you'll see I have a portainer for the management here, and it's just an Apache container that has some storage or a volume mapped to this tilde/website directory. So this is my HTTP data directory, or HTTP root directory, if you will. So if I do an ls real quick, you'll see there's a block me and a block me.back. I've been doing some messing around a little bit with the just the different IP types, etc. So if we go back to my threat feed real quick, you'll see view the entries. So I'm gonna leave that there for now, and I'll just go to nano blockme.txt, and I'll go down to the bottom. And I will shamelessly say I did copy this from Team Cymru's block bogons or bogons threat feed. So if you want a nice free external threat feed, go to Team Cymru, and I will show the URL after I'm done with the editing here. But I just want to show you. So I want to put an invalid IP address in here. Let's say 465.0.0.0/24. Now, and realistically speaking, anything above 255 is not really going to work. In fact, anything above the Class D range isn't going to work. But I want to show you what happens if you put the incorrect. Of course, I have to do sudo. So okay, so let's do this again, and Feel free to judge me or roast me for not knowing how to go all the way to the bottom of a file in Nano. And once we're there, we'll be there. We're going to pick on 465.0.0.0/24. 465.0.0.0/24. Anyone ever watch Iron Man 3 and notice that the IP addresses he's connecting to is like way up there in the 900s? Do you think they actually knew that those were invalid and they were used for that reason because they're invalid? Just a thought. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close out. So now I've added that, and we should... Oh, it's already updated. So you can see that one invalid. If you view the entries and we go all the way down to the bottom, that 465 dot whatever is going to be like, hey, wait a second, that ain't right. You need to clean up, and it won't use that. So, you know, you are somewhat protected from fat fingerings or any other misgivings. Now, one thing I would say to be very, very careful on is that you don't put 0.0.0.0/0. That is everything. So just be mindful of what you're putting in. Review it twice, just like Santa. You know, make your list, check it twice. One more thing before we go. Just wanted to show you Team Cymru's threat feed. So if we take a look real quick at the threat feed itself, Team Cymru, and as you see, this is identical to what I had. Now, if you take a look, the spelling is CYMRU. That's team-CYMRU. This is not a sponsored video by Team Cymru. However, because I shamelessly used the content of their threat feed to set up my own internal threat feed for the purposes of this video, I wanted to give them a shout out. They've got some really great things on their website. If you're looking for a more commercial threat feed and you're a small organization who can't afford or doesn't have the skill set to do a lot of threat research, Team Cymru is a really, really great option. They do a lot of research. They're a really great organization. Check them out. And just like that, it's the end of the year. I want to thank everyone who has subscribed on YouTube and everyone who has taken a look at the website. We definitely appreciate that. I've enjoyed putting out a ton of content, and I do recognize that I've had a lull in content throughout the year. Had a few personal things go on and was just super busy and could not find the time. So I appreciate you guys sticking with me through this. I also wanted to put a shout out to everyone who responded to my Reddit post asking for content ideas. I'm working on all of those and look forward to releasing those next year. Happy holidays to everyone, and you all have a safe and happy new year. Thank you.